This is an in-depth interview I recorded with one of my students, Isaac. And this isn't one of those interviews where you only get a high-level overview. We dig into every detail of what Isaac did to succeed so you can apply it yourself. I used to record these interviews for a paid membership, but they just become too valuable to keep locked up. So I've been releasing them on my channel. If you're new here, my name is Preston. I've been in real estate for 7 years, and my portfolio is worth over $15 million, and I make $400,000 per year in net profit from my Airbnbs. This latest Deep Dives interview is a behind-the-scenes look at Isaac's 2 Airbnbs. Him and his wife are both passionate about real estate and hosting, which is why they decided to pursue Airbnb. In this video, we pulled back the curtain on his approach to winning over landlords who have failed with Airbnbs before, and how he furnishes stunning Airbnbs without blowing the budget. We're also going to talk about the reverse guest screening tactic that he uses to qualify for Superhost faster and to get more bookings. We're also going to go into a whole lot more, so let's dive into it. All right, we got Isaac here. Isaac Eck. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yes.
Awesome. So, you've obviously been crushing it while before you've even joined the program, right? It took you a couple months to get up and running. But for those of you that don't know who you are, let's kind of start back on, how you got started, what your background is, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Yeah, well, first of all, Preston, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here and share my story and how I got here. So my name's Isaac. I'm from Florida. I have a background. I went to business school. I have a business management degree, and then decided to be a cop. So I was a cop for a couple years. And then I got married in March, so a year ago, actually this month. And my wife and I decided that we wanted more from our life than just the 9 to 5. And so we both had a passion for real estate, and we both have a passion for hosting people. So we thought Airbnb would be a really cool combination of the two. And I had been following your YouTube channel for a while. We signed up for the workshop, listened to all the facts that you were presenting and how you all laid it all out. And we decided to purchase the course, and that was in August.
Love it, man. Let's talk about, you and your wife, because I think a lot of the students in the community, they have a significant other, they have this, partner they're doing this with. So was this something that you had to get her on board, or was it something that you guys both knew you wanted to get to? So can you talk a little bit about that dynamic?
Yeah. This is something we both knew we wanted to get to. And so it wasn't really me convincing her. It was more us deciding to do it together, which is, I think, a unique scenario. I think a lot of people maybe don't have that privilege. They're trying to, they're both have the same goals, but different ideas of how to get there. And so we both are very on board with the same page. And so much so actually so bought the course in August, and in November, I was able to quit my job, and she got an opportunity to do, she's a nurse, and she got an opportunity to do travel nursing. And so that kind of freed up my time with the money that she was able to make through travel nursing, and freed up my time to solely devote my time to the business. So she was very supportive throughout the whole entire process of, how many hundreds of phone calls I made, and still was, it feels like I wasn't getting anywhere. But she was, just keep trying, very, very encouraging. So we make a great team, and I'm very blessed and thankful for her.
And so we're going to do a little teaser. You have 2 properties up now. One of them's doing great. One of them's not kind of performing where you want it to, but we're going to talk about, what you're doing to get to the point where you're going to be able to hit those projections you had. But we'll do that in a little bit. But so let's kind of talk about, this was your very first business venture, I would imagine, right?
I've kind of been entrepreneurial minded since I was 13. I fell in love with reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad books, Robert Kiyosaki. And so when I was 13, I had 2 gumball machines. I had one at a bowling alley, and then one at like an office. And so that's kind of where it started for me. I was very interested in passive income and those kind of things, but kind of just, always interested in business, but never actually followed through since that venture. So I played tennis growing up, so I would teach tennis lessons, but that's not the kind of business that I wanted. And so this is my first real venture since 13-year-old Isaac with his vending machines.
Got it. So yeah, it sounds like you had that bug from an early age. And obviously that's kind of something that I see a lot of entrepreneurs, people that are successful, that were kind of wired that way. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with a 9 to 5 if that's something that brings you joy and you like that routine of it. Because I know, for example, my brother, he's completely opposite of me, where I'm always wanted to be, start my business, slinging Pokemon cards when I was younger. He's always been like, I just want to go to college, get my master's degree, and just kind of write out the next 40 years. But so it's interesting that, you kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit even when you were younger.
Yeah, I think I've always had a drive to do something maybe different. I think that's maybe also what drew me to being a cop for a while. Kind of something different, it's not 9 to 5, even though you're there for 40 hours a week. It's 12-hour shifts, and you get a little bit more free time. So I think I was always driven by wanting to be the captain or whatever of my own life and my own time. And so you kind of have that in a way in a public service profession, but it's not to the degree that you want. So I just got tired of saying, I worked that weekend, or I can't go to this birthday party, I worked that weekend. And so I knew I wanted to change, and kind of reignited that entrepreneurial spirit that I had since 13.
Yeah. And
you can relate to this too, because my wife was a respiratory therapist, similar to your wife as a nurse. And on paper, it sounds great. Like, oh, you only work 3 days a week and, 12-hour shifts, and then you get the rest of the week to do whatever you want. But in reality, you need like 2 days to recover. And then the schedule's always all wonky. So, if we want to go on a trip, we had to always leave early, or we could only go for a couple of days just because of her schedule. And I think that's really when that pain settled in when we were working our 9 to 5s of trying to like figure something out. And that I feel like that was a big catalyst to kind of pushing us forward as well. But it's interesting, kind of similar backgrounds there.
Yeah. And then with the longer shifts, it's great. You get you only work 3 days a week, but you're working 12-hour shifts. So you have back-to-back days. Like you said, you need a day to recover.
Yeah. Or
you get home and all you want to do is eat and sleep and do it again. So that freedom is nice, but it's still not, I think, what a lot of people crave, to have that whatever I want to do when I wake up this morning,
Yeah. 100%. I'm sure a lot of cops and nurses are nodding their heads just because people are like, oh, you only work 3 days a week, like get over it. But if you don't know how like physically demanding that type of labor is. But anyway, we could talk about that forever, but let's kind of shift gears a little bit. From the market research side, talk about, kind of what your process was for finding the market and then finding that first property that you listed. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So initially it was, trying to find attractions. I thought about attractions, where I would want to do, like what, obviously I'm from Florida, something in beach, and then it's really expensive. And so I just started kind of broadening my horizons, and I went, all over the country looking at different horizons or different attractions. Started looking at Savannah, started looking at like Arizona, Scottsdale, Phoenix, Grand Canyon areas, things like that. So any major attraction I was very interested in. And I either ran into regulations early on. That was not something I was anticipating at all. And so the regulations kind of forced me to narrow my search a little bit. And then I just started thinking of like, where am I comfortable doing it? And so I ended up in Birmingham, Alabama, which is where our first property is. I went to school for a year up there and know the area, have a bunch of friends and people that I consider family up there that were willing to kind of help me out. And so that's where I started. I was comfortable with I knew the attractions, I knew the area. It's not the most booming of markets, but it still offers enough there that made for a pretty good market for my first one.
Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of, I notice a common theme, right? A lot of people are like, I've heard of students that say, they have no idea about Miami, but they've heard people love to go to Miami. So they're, gung-ho about it. They do the research and they're like, well, why don't I just go back to like what I know? And so, perfect example here, the attractions, you kind of have that unfair advantage over people who've never been to that market because you kind of know those little, hidden pockets and things to do there. Not saying you have to do that because there's a process to, really get intimate with the market even if you've never been there. But, that's a common theme that I've seen from students is, they first are like, okay, let's go here, New York or California or Miami. And then they kind of hone in and they're like, well, this market over here, it might not be as sexy as, one of these big markets, but they can offer me just as much cash flow, if not better, than some of these other places with less regulation. So it's interesting that you went that route as well.
Yeah. And if you know the area, like kind of like you're describing, the places to eat, like your welcome book, it's all about the experience. So if you have a detailed, welcome book, like we do at our Birmingham property, where there's a few really good restaurants that are only privy to Birmingham, and so you can highlight those and guests feel like, okay, I'm actually staying with a local, quote unquote, that knows the area and feels comfortable with it. So I think that's pretty important, at least for your first one. And then obviously, like you said, there's a process to do it without even being there. But for my first one, getting my feet wet into the business, I wanted to be comfortable. I was able to reconnect with some people that I went to school with, and it's been a great experience.
Awesome, man. Yeah, we'll go over all the boots on the ground team here in a little bit, how to find that, even if you don't have, friends or college friends. Again, there's a process for everything. We're just, kind of talking about Isaac's experience here. Let's talk about, okay, you found the market, and then let's talk about how you found the properties and then your experience with cold calling landlords. I think that's something that a lot of people, start to like tremble in their shoes when they hear a cold calling. But let's kind of break it down to where, how did you find that first property and then your experience talking to that landlord?
Yeah, actually, so the property in Birmingham is kind of a unique situation because I knew when I was looking at like AirDNA, you look at the percentage of different listings. And so those of you who don't know, AirDNA is a software that compiles short-term rental data over the last 12 months and onward and kind of gives you a snapshot look at that market. So Birmingham, for example, has about 47+% of their listings is one-bedroom apartments, basically. And so I knew very quickly that one bedroom was not going to allow me to stand out. So I kind of went bigger, went home. I chose a 5-bedroom. I saw that was 4% of the market. I knew that I would be able to cater to large groups. And so that kind of narrowed my search down real quick. So I found one. It was actually listed as a 4-bedroom. And I called the landlord. I was like, this looks great. I ran some of the numbers and I called the landlord landlord. And he goes, oh yeah, that sounds good. I was like, wait, what? Because my experience was, going through like answering all their questions. And he's like, oh, so you want to Airbnb it? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, that sounds good. He's like, I do charge $100 more for that arrangement. So it went from up $100 on that. And I come to find out that the property is actually the previous tenant was arbitraging this exact property. So that was kind of a unique, I didn't have to really convince the landlord. He just kind of already understood the system, had a decent experience with the previous tenant, and was pretty interested in gung-ho about letting me do it. So I didn't take a lot of convincing for the first one, but I will say I was prepared. I did how many calls before that to get my easy yes, but it doesn't always happen like that. But yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. A couple of questions that I'm sure people have. So the first is, how many calls did it take for you to get that first yes?
A lot. I don't know if I would have a number. I got a lot of yeses, but that was before my process was kind of honed down. So I would get yeses, and I would just kind of, like you're saying, landlord outreach, I think, is something that people, analysis by paralysis, they don't want to mess up. And so I just kind of jumped in and just started talking to people and answering their questions. And if I didn't have the answer, I'd acknowledge that. And so I got a lot of yeses. And then the more I dug into the market or the regulations or the numbers, it just wouldn't make sense. So this wasn't my first yes, but it was my first green light, full green light for willing landlord, limited regulations, and a decent market.
And that's a huge pro tip, guys. A lot of people think they have to run all the numbers. They take an hour to, plug all the numbers in, dial in all the comps. They call the landlord. They're like, no, not interested. Hang up. You just wasted an hour doing research, right? So our process that, we go through is, just put up a bunch of properties in a spreadsheet and just start calling, right? Because that's the only way you're going to get better. And then you can always, even if you get an answer, a yes, like Isaac has done plenty of times before he got his first, solid one, if the numbers don't make sense, then you just save yourself a ton of headache, right? And a lot of people are like, well, what if they do say yes? You just call them back and politely say, hey, sorry, the numbers aren't going to work unless you're, willing to lower the rent, which they usually aren't. And that's kind of how you go about that process.
Yeah, I had a couple of those. One market I was looking at is Indianapolis. And for those of you guys in the short-term rental game or looking into it, it doesn't have any regulations there, but it's a pretty saturated market. And so I had two actually potential deals there that both landlords said yes, and I reran the numbers, and it was $1,000 for, cash flow, which isn't bad. But for my first deal, I was really looking for 1,500 plus. I know 2,500 is the golden number, but for me to get my feet in the door, I was comfortable with 1,500 plus. And so I just kept moving. But yeah, like you're saying, there's nothing wrong with, hey, it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
You just get experience. It's like going on a job interview just for the practice. Pick up the phone and call. You get a yes or a no, you're practicing.
100%. That's the key right there. The other question that I had that I'm sure people have is, okay, you heard that this place was getting arbitrage before, so maybe the question, maybe it didn't, but you're probably thinking, okay, why did this other person that was arbitraging it decide to let it go? Did that ever come up, or did you ask the landlord, that specifically? Just curious on that.
That's a great question. That was one of my first questions when he said, yeah, she's doing that now. And he actually wouldn't rent it to me unless I saw the property. So I was able to actually walk through it with her setup. And so I was like, why is she not continuing this? So I actually reached out to her on Airbnb. We had a phone call, and she's like, there's nothing wrong with it. She's like, I just don't want to arbitrage anymore. And so I'm going to take capital. She has a bunch of properties that she all purchases, and she said she tried the arbitrage and didn't really like it for one reason or another. And so, yeah, so she just kind of moved on, but she's like, it makes good money. So that was kind of once I found out it was an Airbnb, I was like, she's losing money. It's a big red flag for me. But the more I dug into it, it was actually more reassuring. And then I actually found it on AirDNA. So in my search on Zillow, it was listed as a 4-bedroom, but she had it listed on Airbnb as a 5-bedroom. So I missed it, I guess, in my search. So I went back through and looked at 5 bedrooms and found it, saw what her revenue was and all that. So that became my baseline for my projections for this year.
And people don't think that 1 bedroom makes a difference, but it can make a huge difference, especially in a market where most of the inventory, let's say, are 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms. But if you're able to get that 4th or 5th bedroom, then, people are going to filter by that. Even if you have the nicest place in the world, people, that filter by how many guests, they want to go with, they're going to miss your listing. So typically more heads and beds equals more revenue. And it sounds like you kind of got that. But so you walk through it, you kind of got comfortable. And another thing that's interesting that you mentioned is she's like, okay, I'm not interested in arbitrage anymore. I always say I recommend 99% of people go through arbitrage first, just because it's way less risky, way less capital intensive, but everyone's in different parts of their journeys, right? So I started off with arbitrage, but now I only purchase properties just because I need more of the tax breaks that come along with it and all the other benefits of owning real estate. But the reason arbitrage is so important for most people is because they don't have that second source of cash flow coming in from any other investments. And that's why, that arbitrage is is that lower barrier to entry where you can start building up that cash flow. And then obviously the ultimate goal is to now go and purchase these properties, which it sounds like that investor in particular was focused on now.
Yeah. I mean, there were some other interesting things she was mentioning on the phone. I'll leave those out. But the way I like to look at it, kind of like you're describing, is like, imagine if you have, if you want to get into real estate investing, to purchase a property, which very, very difficult to find anything for less than $200,000 now, depending on the market. And you're just going to long-term rental, long-term. You're going to spend $40,000 on a 20% down payment and maybe cash flow $300 maybe. Whereas you can take that same $20,000 and put it into a singular property and generate $1,500 or more in cash flow. I think that's the beauty of this method, the bridge method, is to kind of jumpstart, like you're saying, people into real estate investing to generate that cash flow to then purchase. So it's kind of like stepping stone.
Yeah, 100%. Talking about finalizing agreements, it sounds like the landlord already had, experience with that. So we can kind of, skip over that. So now let's talk about the furniture aspect of this. So this is kind of an interesting one where they already had the furniture. So did you purchase some of it from her? How did you go about, kind of designing and staging the property here?
Yeah, she took everything out. So the only thing I actually did buy from her was the smart lock, and then two smart TVs that were already at the property. So I bought those from her, but that was it. So everything else was empty when we came in there. So if you look at our listing, that's all my wife's design. So she loves doing that. She has a pretty good eye for it, I like to think. And she did a great job. We worked together for it and come up with color schemes and things. And we always joke that she buys it and I build it. So...
Yeah, you want to share your screen and actually show people the listing, and then we can kind of talk through some of the design.
So this is the property in Birmingham. So we like to highlight the outdoor picture first. So these are the first 5 photos. Obviously, the outdoor pictures we found in some of the listings, because it's such a historic area, they were all focusing on the exterior, which is why we kind of have this one here. But other than that, we felt like we could stand out a little bit by offering, an outdoor space and amenities, which some of them have. They're just deep in their listings. So we wanted to put that kind of front and center in it.
For those that don't know, design, the amenities, like the experience that you're going to be, giving to these guests is super important. And it's also really important to be able to, kind of showcase that through your photos. So just kind of pay attention to that. And, you guys have done a great job with this. So if you want to kind of talk about a little bit about your thought process as you were setting this up.
Yeah, I'll highlight a couple of them, of our favorite parts of it. So the kitchen, I think, looks great. He already had this, so we didn't really do too much to it, but we can accommodate 12 people at this Airbnb. And so in the dining area, we've got this table that's actually convertible so that you can turn this into a pool table, ping pong table, as well as the dining area that you see here.
Sounds cool.
So our kind of goal for that was there's a 6-bedroom unit, right, like literally 2 doors down, that's listed on Airbnb. And they do, compared to last year, they did $50,000 of more revenue than this property did. And so they have they have arcade games, they have a little speakeasy. They just have way more amenities than the previous tenant did. And so we were trying to accommodate, because they can sleep 16, we're able to sleep 12. So we were trying to kind of offer these amenities that would maybe take a little bit of their business, because we're offering these, the ping pong and pool table. That was kind of our strategy mainly for this one, is to kind of make it, like if there's 12 of them, why would they spend $100 more to go stay at that place with the same amenities than they could stay at ours? So that was kind of the strategy. And then the rooms, pretty standard for just, what you would expect out of an Airbnb. We got different, we got a queen, twins, and then we go to IKEA a lot. So this is our cool little live, it's fake plants, but it's our live wall that I think kind of just offers a unique little space that people don't have at their own house. So those are kind of our favorite plot spots. And then we got some custom art. This is at the top of the stairs. Some custom art. Birmingham, this skyline, and then 3 famous monuments and places to go see when you're in Birmingham. We tried to make it a little bit more amenity focused and then kind of unique, some of the decorations.
So I know you mentioned IKEA. For this particular property, how much did you roughly spend on, the furniture and all the amenities and stuff?
I actually have a whole spreadsheet I could pull up if that's beneficial.
Yeah, let's do that.
So this is room by room. Total cost we spent on this one is $18,000, roughly that number. And then we have it all separated room by room. So we actually, because we were able to go there physically, so we were there for 2 weeks and we furnished it. We actually did get some things on Facebook Marketplace. My wife is pretty good at finding them and messaging. She was just spamming messaging everybody. We found our couch, a couch, typically a good sectional is like at least $2,000. We found ours for like $800. I think is how much we found it for. Yeah, $850. So we tried to just keep track of everything, But what's interesting about this one is we spent 18,000 and then the estimated, so this is like my pre-calculations, we estimated, 18,000 to furnish. So we kind of were pretty close on this one. We hit the mark pretty well, I think, with our budget. But definitely, if we didn't get the couch on Facebook, if we didn't get some of these things, we probably would have pushed closer to 23,000 because of some of these things. So I don't think I understood that going in. Like I have my, cost per bedroom estimates and things like that. But going in, I was not expecting certain expenses.
Obviously, like your property is a little bit bigger, right? 5 bedrooms. So obviously the price is going to be a little bit higher. And it all depends on the market, depends on how many bedrooms you're looking after. Obviously, if you have a bigger house, it's going to be a little bit more to furnish. But staying within that 20,000 budget for a 5-bedroom place is honestly pretty dang good.
Yeah, we did a pretty, I like to think it, at least.
Yeah, you guys obviously did great on this. We'll talk about the numbers here in a second, but let's kind of talk about, how far is this from your property? Like, did you guys set this up remotely? Let's talk about like actually getting everything set up for this property.
So we decided to just drive there and do it ourselves. We had a kind of unique situation with my wife's job, her contract ending, and on our way to the next one, we were able to stop in Birmingham, furnish this one. We were there for 2.5 weeks, I think, all in all. And, that some people might think that's a long time, but I personally severely underestimated how much goes into setting this up. So I was, we were waking up at 6:30 and awake until at least 11 working on this. So, long days. I mean, it was super fun. Probably one of the most fun times that we've done together is furnishing these houses, but it's a lot of work, so I know there are ways to do it remotely. And, if you have a little bit more time, but we were trying to, the day our lease started, we were in there. And then, so we took 2 weeks to kind of make it how we wanted. And then we were out of there.
Yeah. And obviously, it depends on your availability, your strengths. Like for me, I wouldn't be caught dead with the hammer just because I'm terrible at that kind of thing. So I'd rather pay someone to do it. And again, there's ways to do it remote. And that's kind of like what I probably, teach a lot of our students on. But sounds like you guys had a blast and you guys have the skills to do it. So obviously you guys did a great job obviously with this setup. Yeah, and then let's talk about the boots on the ground team, right? Like the cleaners, the handyman, and all that. Now you're not physically there, so you obviously have to find a reliable team to handle all that stuff. So how did you find your cleaner, your handyman, and those types of people?
So my cleaners for this property and the other property, I use a website called Turno, and you just kind of reach out to them. You put the job out, and then they bid on the job. So that's how I found them. And then I phone interviewed a few of them, kind of asking them what their cleaning process was like. So that's pretty straightforward, finding comparable. I wanted this cleaning fee. Like I was getting quoted pretty expensive. Obviously it's a huge house. It's 3,000 square feet. So I was getting quotes pretty high, and our competitor's cleaning fee was like 170. So I knew I wanted to come in under that because we're smaller. So I knew like if somebody was kind of shopping around and they were meticulous with seeing the cleaning fee, they would see that. So ours is, under that because we wanted to make sure we could keep it. But our cleaners are fantastic. She's great communication, and that's what I look for the most. I think if I'm messaging you, if you bid on a job and you don't respond to me when I'm asking you for a phone interview, like to me at least, I'm not going to waste my time interviewing you because you didn't respond to a job that you bid on. So she was extremely responsive. I could call her, right now if I had a problem, and she'd answer or text me back, so she's extremely communicative, which is I think huge for this business.
I was gonna say that's the most important thing I look for cleaners, especially if they bid on the job, and if they take longer than, for me, I like if they respond, any later than 12 hours, then they're usually almost a no-go. I've never had a cleaner work out if they taken longer than that. And I know you might sound unreasonable, but we're in the hospitality space, right? Where things have to get done quickly, and communication is the number one thing that we look for in a cleaner. So, and that's kind of in line with everyone else I've talked to about that as well.
Yeah. And then our handyman is a buddy from college. He's great. His name's Josh. He's willing to kind of go over there, help me out with random stuff. He helps me out with the Ring cameras. I had some issues with that early on, and he's great. He wants to help, and I pay him pretty well, I like to think. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody. I get to work with people that I trust. I think that's one thing that maybe freaks people out a lot is who do I hire? These people that you're just, on Thumbtack looking up. You don't really know what they're about, but I knew this guy for a couple of years and trusted him. So I have no problem with him being in the property and helping me out with things. So that's another, I think, benefit, like we were talking earlier, with being in your backyard. If you can't be in the city that you personally live in, then be in a city where maybe you can develop that trust with somebody that you already know there.
Yeah. And I like to first of all, the cleaner is the most important person on the team. And so once you find a solid cleaner, then they usually have a network of people that they can refer you to, like handyman, electricians, plumbers, just because they're going to put their reputation, their name on the line by referring someone. And so we've had really good success finding our handymen and other people through that method as well, if you don't have, someone that you know in the market.
Yeah, referrals are huge because, like you said, their reputation and if they're going to refer somebody, they're not going to just refer Joe Schmo. They're going to want to refer somebody that's actually going to do a good job. So,
all right, so let's talk about kind of the software that you're using, the pricing, the guest management, all that stuff. Just because a lot of people think that they have to really be in the weeds, the day to day of it, and basically this turning into another full time job. And so obviously we use software to mitigate all that and to streamline a lot of the operations side of the business. So what are some of the tools that you're using to automate your business?
Yeah, well, now I utilize this software, but it's funny. Early on, we would get a booking, and I'm like scrambling to respond within like 5 minutes or something, And so I don't know why it took me so long to set up these automated messaging, and just the Price Labs and Hospitable is what I use. But it's great. Now I get to just look at my, we got a booking, great. Now I don't have to scram and type out a text message or something. Thanks for booking. Just boom, it sends it. So those kind of automations are huge. And again, those are not things that I thought about when we were getting into this. So organizing their personal codes for the smart locks, like that's just automated. I don't have to think about that. So pretty great. I don't spend a whole lot of time managing them other than communicating with the cleaners and the guests when they have specific requests. And as long as you check your phone occasionally and you see if anybody messaged you, you're pretty in the clear.
Yeah, for sure. I know I teased this at the beginning, but let's talk about, I think the second property, you said it's not living up to what your projections were. So what were some of the reasons you think that it's not performing the way you wanted to, and what steps are you taking to be able to get to those projections?
Yeah. So it's a pretty seasonal market to begin with. It's in northwestern Arkansas. And so that's one of the downsides to kind of like we've been talking about being in your backyard. I've been to Arkansas one time. So found the property kind of almost accidentally, ran the numbers, looked at the market, but it's very seasonal. It's on the lake. I'm okay with the seasonality as long as we're getting, bookings are different, but I'm significantly underperforming the market right now. So ways we're kind of trying to triage it is there's a hot tub that is not working. So that's one huge amenity for that market. A lot of the top competitors, they have hot tubs, they have pools. And so I'm working with a local company getting that fixed, should be up and running in the next couple weeks. So that'll be huge. Once that is up and running, then I'm going to retake photos. Wasn't thrilled with the photos. We always do the professional photography, but some are better than others. So wasn't thrilled with her work. It wasn't horrible. It's not bad. I mean, I can show you the listing, but it's just for what we wanted to highlight. We want a little bit better. And I love the way our first listing turned out with the photos there. That's the second one. And then just a little bit more color, I think, in the living room would kind of make the first couple photos stand out a little bit. It's a pretty colorful listing throughout because it's, we wanted to go right on the lake, wanted to kind of pop color wise. So every room is pretty colorful except for the living room. So we think the last little detail is just get some more color throw pillows and put out there to kind of make that pop a little bit more.
And obviously, projections are one thing. And then once you kind of start getting into the weeds, and especially when you go into a market that's more seasonal, you have to kind of bake that into your numbers as you're projecting it out. Because, maybe you're launching in the middle of winter where it's completely dead. And so you have to factor that in to your startup costs, or you can even negotiate with your landlord on maybe some rent credits while you're kind of ramping up. Or another strategy that you can do is maybe go live a month before the peak season. So like if your peak season starts in June, then you want to go live by May, so that way you don't have to come out of pocket as much. So there's different ways about this, but when you pick this market in particular, it sounds like you had that seasonality in mind. So did you anticipate kind of being slower to start off and then start ramping up, or what was kind of your thought process there?
Yeah, definitely anticipating being slower, definitely anticipated coming out of pocket a little bit more. Last month we had one booking, and obviously it's February last month in northwestern Arkansas where there's snow everywhere. So people aren't traveling to the lake. But this month we're doing pretty good. We've got 3 bookings this month and pretty close to breaking even for the month with 2 open weekends left. So we're hoping for, a couple more bookings to kind of like at least make us break even this month. But, we're starting to get that traction, get those 5-star reviews, and hopefully become a guest favorite. All of those things kind of change your place in the algorithm for Airbnb. So we're kind of hoping for that. Plus all the things I mentioned beforehand of like the hot tub's going to be huge. We have a pretty nice looking outdoor space. And then to add the hot tub, I think it would be a huge amenity, kind of pushing the revenue up a little. bit.
Yep. And then it sounds like peak season, just summer, got summer vacations for that market.
Yeah, we've already got, June and July are profitable months already with some bookings. So looking pretty good on that standpoint, but getting to there, trying to not have to do like a personal cash influx for the business. Like last month we had to feed the business a little bit more than we kind of anticipated. All in all, we've had a great time doing it, and we like that property a lot. We did a lot of cool things there, pushed our limits for what we were comfortable with, but I think it turned out pretty well.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't like to talk about this, but like worst case scenario, right? Let's say, you get a 12 months worth of data, right? You have a full, year under your belt, and the numbers aren't what you're projecting or liking. It's much easier to get out of a lease than it is to get out of a mortgage, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's kind of goes back to the arbitrage model, where I prefer that for 99% of people, especially if it's like their first, endeavor in real estate or business, just because there are way less risks involved. But it sounds like, what you're kind of like on the path to optimizing and being able to be successful in the aggregate for the year. And we'll circle back here in a year to see how that's performing. But sounds like you guys are on the right track.
Yeah, we, I was looking at it this morning. I think there's a large variety. So a couple of the comps in that market have a pretty big swing. Like one of them's doing 110,000 revenue. Another's doing like 62. That's like a $50,000 swing. So even if we come in below 62, let's say 55, we're still in the green. Maybe not making our money back, like our initial investment, but at least like the expenses of the, to operate it, we're not losing money. So then kind of like you're saying, we can either make the decision to continue with that, and hopefully it picks up towards the end, or we can take that furniture into another property. Because that's like all the assets of your business. It's not the property itself, it's the furniture, it's the amenities when you're arbitraging. When you actually own, then it's the property and the location. But for us, it would be easy to just, like you're saying, pick up and move to another lease, then kind of stick it out.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So for this property here in Alabama, what are the numbers look like profit for last month or even this month, where you're kind of projecting on that?
Yeah. So last month, I can pull it up here. Last month, we lost a little bit of money. I had a plumbing issue, which so I have it broken down here, all my guests for the month, and then I have the expenses. So total income, $48.23, total out, $48.45, $22 in the hole, basically. This month, we still have two open weekends in March. Sorry, one open weekend in March. We're already at 1,800 in the green. Pretty good, amount of listings or bookings here. Same for April. So we're doing pretty well on that one. That one's kind of carrying our business, but is what it is.
Yeah. And you guys went live in January of this year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's why, that one is in the red, just because obviously you're kind of ramping up. But typically most markets, and it sounds like this market's the same, the summer months is when like the peak season kind of starts ramping up, right?
Yep. So we went live end of January, I think like January 20th or something. And we got literally a last minute booking here. So that we were so excited. It's like our first booking, it popped up on our screen, So yeah, that's why this one's in the hole. The lease started January 7th, and I guess we were live a little bit earlier than that. But yeah, so then February was a good month, and we were just excited to kind of break even and not have to feed that one. And then now we're looking pretty good for the projections for the year. And my anticipation is to hit like 74, kind of to match the previous listing. I think, like I said, we offer more amenities. I think if we can hit 80, 85, I'd be pretty happy. Compared to the 125,000 that the neighbor's doing, if we're in the middle a little bit, I'd be pleased.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, you're kind of trending in that right direction already, which is awesome. Let's kind of talk about, some of your objectives here for, the rest of the year. So what's kind of your goals regarding your properties, profit, all that stuff?
Yeah. So, trying to, like I said, troubleshoot the Arkansas property, keep Alabama. We're now a guest favorite, so that's helpful. We, in theory, if I'm understanding it correctly, will be Superhost by April 1st. That's when they do their quarterly evaluation, so that'll help and change our place in the algorithm as well. Trying to look at between both properties, trying to hit like 140,000 in revenue, and then that would translate to about a 60 to 75,000 depending in net profit for the business as a whole. That's the goal for the business. We're trying to expand to one more arbitrage property within the year, and then hopefully this time next year we will be looking to purchase our second property.
Nice. Love it, man. And so I know you kind of, teased it at the beginning. I'm sure people are curious. So you were a cop, you quit that job. What was the reasoning behind, quitting the job there? And, it sounds like obviously you had a lot of faith in this business model and you guys are doing great. What was kind of like the reasoning behind that, if you are comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the profession. People always ask me that, like, did you hate it? And I say, no, I loved it. It's a very rewarding profession, but I was very early on into it. So I only did it for a couple years. So as far as a pension goes, I didn't really lose much by leaving. And my wife had this opportunity to do travel nursing, which is one of her dreams, and now we're able to live in different places as we're working in different places. So that was kind of twofold of it. And then we were able to budget and see the numbers make sense to actually even start this business. I think you asked me earlier on, like, how did I hear about the arbitrage model and stuff, but I actually saw the other day in my Zillow messaging, because I would just watch your shorts and your YouTube videos kind of explain the process, but I had no idea what it would even take to do it. And so I would just message, I was looking back, I was like, man, that looks so stupid. I would just message these hosts or these people's properties on Zillow, like, hey, like I have a proposition for you. And like I don't even know if that property would be profitable, let alone I didn't even build a relationship with the landlord. So I was like, just cringing at my old self. But that was the start of kind of I had faith in the concept, at least early on.
And you did what 99.99% of people don't do, and that's taking action, taking that knowledge and then just putting yourself out there. And now you got 2 properties, you and your wife are traveling, and you're able to do this full time, which is, you love to see it, right? And so obviously, you've been in this for a few months now. So like, what does your family think about this? Like, were they skeptical? Like, what are their kind of thoughts on this whole business model and this new venture for you guys?
Yeah, they're pretty supportive. Actually, when you kind of sit down and explain it to them, and when you especially believe in something, you kind of exude that passion and that knowledge of it because you study it. If you're passionate about something, you're going to study it and know the answers. So I think my mom is a big influence in my life for like entrepreneurial thinking. She kind of, hey, read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 13. And, so when I would bring it to her, she's like, it makes sense. If you can generate cash flow, then so that's kind of what she thinks. And then my wife's family is also pretty supportive of me kind of stepping out and starting our business. It's all around pretty supportive. And I have a few friends, even from the sheriff's office where I was working, that are pretty supportive. I was talking to a buddy the other day and he was asking about it and super excited for me, said the listing looks great. So it's cool to have that support from people, which isn't always common. You get people that say, oh, that's crazy, that'll never work, Airbnb bust, all those fun things. So as long as you do things right, like those are real things, but setting yourself apart and continue to try to strive to be ahead of the competition is what will allow you to be successful in it.
Yeah. 100%. All right. So to wrap this up, what would you, what advice would you give to your younger self, or, just to someone that's looking to start their own business? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I always tell people this. Being a cop, they always tell you to have a strong why, that you do something. As a cop, you walk into a lot of unfortunate and unpleasant situations and can weigh pretty heavy on you. So you have to have a strong reason for why you're doing it. And so I would say the same thing applies to business. If you have a strong reason, and not that the reason is, I just want to be rich, like that's a reason in and of itself, but having like a reason to be financially free. And I heard on a podcast the other day, like always ask yourself why. So if you want to be financially free, ask yourself why. And if the reason is to spend more time with your wife and kids, then ask yourself why, and follow the why until you really get down to the deep meaning of what your motivation is. I think that's super important.
Love that, man. Well, excited to see, your continued success and all the success you've had so far. Appreciate you coming on and sharing the intimate details of your business. I know a lot of people are uncomfortable about this, but thanks for being an open book, the wins and the losses. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
If you're tired of watching others succeed with Airbnb and you're serious about building your own business, me and my team can help you make that happen. If you're interested, click the link below to apply for a free consultation. We'll set up a time to chat about how we can work together to build your Airbnb business and scale to $10,000 per month and beyond. This isn't a sales call or anything like that. On this call, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you some questions to really understand if this real estate model is going to be the right move for you. You can ask any questions that you have as well. The link to apply is right below in the description. All right, with that being said, we'll see you in the next video.